I was an illegitimate child. Yep, my mother was the infamous homewrecker everyone despised. She was just an intern at a hotel when she met my father, the CEO of some big corporation. Apparently, my father was drunk that night, and after a wild fling, my mother stuck to him like glue. Back then, she was young and beautiful. No man could resist someone like her throwing themselves at them. My father thought throwing some money at her and keeping a little side piece would be simple enough, but my mother had bigger plans. She secretly got pregnant, hoping to force her way into the main seat. When that didn't work, she cried, screamed, and even threatened to end it all just to bring me into the world. I was born a month premature because my mother, hearing that my father's wife had just given birth, rushed to the hospital to have an emergency C-section. She didn't even wait for the anesthesia to wear off before calling my father, demanding he claim his newborn daughter. However, guess what? My father turned off his phone. Honestly, I couldn't blame him. Any man stuck with a woman like my mother would probably wish they could go back and undo their mistakes. It was too bad for him, though. Due to me, he couldn't shake her off. My mother warned him that if he even thought about leaving us, she'd throw herself and me off the top of his company's 29-story building. My mother wasn't one to bluff when it came to stuff like that. She made sure people knew she meant business, and her threats worked like a charm. Hence, my father put us up in a small apartment and sent some money each month. My mother, with her fierce determination and stubbornness, made sure we had a roof over our heads. My earliest memory of my father was my mother calling him relentlessly for a month, threatening him with 3 bottles of sleeping pills and 2 wrist-cutting attempts, until he finally showed up at our shabby little apartment. He tossed a wad of cash on the table, clearly irritated. "Isn't this what you want? Just ask my secretary for money next time, and stop calling me." My mother started dredging up the past, her voice sharp enough to pierce the ceiling. "Marcus Norton, you have no conscience. Remember when?" He cut her off, clearly sick of hearing her complaints. "Today is Cindy's birthday. I have to get back." Cindy Norton was his daughter with his wife, born on the exact same day as me. My mother yanked me over, practically waving me in his face like a banner. "You only care about your wife and daughter. What about this one? She's your flesh and blood too. She's got your last name, doesn't she?" My father's face turned dark as he tried to leave, but my mother clung to his leg like her life depended on it, crying and ranting about how he had abandoned her and ruined her life. No one paid any attention to me, the pawn in all this. I walked over to the coffee table, stared at the pile of cash, and looked up to ask my father, "Are you rich?" He hesitated for a moment, then nodded awkwardly. I grabbed the money, struggling to stand on my tiptoes as I handed it back to him. "I don't eat much. I don't need all this. Can you stay with me for a few minutes instead?" I saw the surprise and shock in his eyes. After a moment of hesitation, he sat down stiffly on the couch. I pulled out a tattered little booklet, a free ad from the supermarket with cartoon characters and a simple story. I climbed up next to him and pushed it into his hands with no flattery but just a natural request, like any kid who craved their father's attention. "Can you read me a story?" He actually read a little, his voice flat and awkward. I listened quietly, gradually leaning against his arm. When he got up to leave, I stopped him, grabbing a small, smudged cake from the table and handing it to him with all the seriousness I could muster. He blinked, finally realizing. "It's your birthday too." I nodded shyly. He looked a bit embarrassed and rubbed his hands together. "I came in a rush. I didn't bring you anything." Still, I smiled brightly and waved the little booklet in my hand. I already got the best birthday gift. The next day, I received a doll bigger than I was. I was 5 that year. Yet, some talents were just innate, like reading people's expressions and understanding what they were thinking. After that, my father started visiting once or twice a month. He didn't have much to say to my mother, but he'd chat with me, tell me stories, and sometimes take me out for a meal. My mother, though, was relentless. One rainy night, she got my father drunk again. The next morning, when he woke up in her bed, he looked like his world had fallen apart. It seemed possible to make the same mistake twice. 10 months later, my brother, Xavier Norton, was born. The first time I saw him, all wrinkled and red, I thought he was the ugliest thing I'd ever seen. He cried his little toothless head off, face flushed bright red. I reached out with a finger to poke his cheek, and just like that, he stopped crying. Instead, he turned his head and latched onto my finger, sucking on it with all his might. With my brother's arrival, my father moved us into a bigger apartment, and the monthly allowance doubled. Life got a bit better. My mother, holding my baby brother, was filled with renewed ambition. She kissed his little face and bragged to me, "Your father's wife only gave him that one daughter, Cindy. But me, I gave him a son. With your brother, your father will have to put me ahead of that old witch." Yet, once again, she was overconfident, for my father had no intention of divorcing his wife, and he made that crystal clear. He even threatened her. "Gracie Adams, you better behave. If you so much as think about bringing this to Mary's attention, you'll regret it. You like threatening to kill yourself, don't you? In that case, go ahead and do it." Mary Norton was my father's wife. I learned later that my father had built his fortune through his wife's family, so divorce wasn't an option for him. In a fit of rage, my mother shoved my brother into my arms and hurled herself at my father, screaming, "I can't take it anymore. Why don't you just kill all of us?" Xavier started wailing in fear. I held him tightly, coldly watching my parents as they fought like wild animals. If I could choose my parents, I definitely wouldn't have picked them. The battle ended with my mother bruised and swollen, and my father with a bloodied face. From that point on, my mother seemed to have given up. She finally realized that no matter what, my father would never marry her, not even after she had his son. Once she accepted that, my mother stopped making my father her life's goal. In her own words, she said, "I've moved on. Who cares about titles or status? You two are his kids, and there's no way he can deny that. I'll just spend his money. It's there for the taking, so why not?" With that, she shifted her focus to playing poker through the night, totally forgetting about the time. She also stopped caring about her appearance. Every time I went to find her at the games, I'd see her shouting while stuffing her face with burgers and fries. From elementary school onward, I had no choice but to take on the responsibility of caring for my little brother. Other kids' first words were mom or dad, but his first word was my name, Willow. When other kids cried for their parents, my brother would cry for me. I used to resent that little burden because he was the reason I didn't have a childhood and couldn't play outside like other kids. After school, I had to rush home. If I didn't, my mother would leave my 2- or 3-year-old brother alone, locking him in the house. He'd cry until his throat was hoarse, covered in his own filth. One day, it was raining heavily outside. My mother had gone off to play poker and hadn't come back. Thunder rumbled outside, and I curled up in bed, trembling. I'd always been terrified of thunderstorms, convinced they sounded like wild beasts that could devour me at any moment. In the dark, a small figure crawled into my bed, his soft little body snuggling into my arms. Just like how I'd comforted him so many times before, he gently patted my back and whispered, "Don't be scared, Willow. Don't be scared. I'm here. I will protect you." I cried and hugged him tightly. He was 5 that year, and that was when I finally understood what it meant to have a sibling. When Xavier was 12, I got accepted into the finance program at Futura University in Ceylon City. My new life was full of hope, and I couldn't wait to start. The only thing that weighed on my mind was Xavier. With a mother like ours, he barely had a steady supply of food, let alone a decent life. He'd just gotten into middle school, still chubby like a little kid, not yet hitting puberty. Despite that, he spoke like an adult, trying to comfort me. "Willow, don't worry about me. Go to Ceylon City. I can take care of myself and look after mother too." I used the money I'd earned from my summer job to hire a housekeeper to cook for them. Still, I left for Ceylon City with a heart full of worry. Undergraduate life was busy and exciting, and for the first time in my 18 years, I felt like I was truly living. As no one there knew I was an illegitimate child, no one mocked or looked down on me. I also didn't have to deal with a mother drowning her life away at the gambling table or a father who couldn't care less about us. However, less than a month after I left, Mary, my father's wife, finally found out about us. It wasn't that my father had been so good at keeping us a secret. It was just that he didn't care enough about us to make it an issue. The whole thing blew up because of my mother. Having lost a ton of money gambling, she went to ask my father for help, and when he refused, she went straight to Mary. Mary lowered herself to go to our apartment, offering my mother $10,000 to disappear and take Xavier with her. My mother scoffed at the amount, shouting, $10,000. Do you think I'm a beggar? I gave birth to 2 Norton kids, and the younger one's even a son. So what if they're illegitimate? Don't think I don't know that the law says even illegitimate kids have inheritance rights. Xavier's going to inherit everything from the Nortons one day. Mary stood up, sneered, and left. I had no idea what she said to my father, but she offered my mother $50,000 when she came back, with the condition that she'd take Xavier with her. My mother, drowning in debt, lit up at the sight of the money. When I found out and tried to stop it, it was too late. Xavier was already living with Mary and my father. I called my mother, furious. Xavier's only 12, and you sent him to live as an outsider in that house. Think from Mary's perspective. Why would she treat her husband's illegitimate son well? My mother, now debt-free, sounded smug. Why wouldn't she treat him well? He's your father's only son, the Norton's only male heir. Your brother's living the good life now, in a big house with servants. Don't be jealous. You're a girl. You can't carry on the family name. Of course, they don't want you. But once Xavier secures his place in the family, we'll both benefit. He'll be rich, and there's no way he'll abandon his own sister. I was seething. You need to get Xavier back. I don't care if we have to eat scraps. He belongs with us. Alas, my mother's deadbeat attitude shone through. Get him back? To send him where? To you. Let me tell you something, don't ruin your brother's future. He's with your father now, your real father. I've raised you 2 long enough, and now, it's his turn. Besides, that $50,000 has already been spent. If you want Xavier back, you can pay for it. Do you have $50,000 lying around? I hung up the phone, fuming. After calming down, I called my father to find out what was going on and what Mary was planning. He was annoyed. It's all because of that idiot, Gracie. She went to Mary for money, and that was how she found out about you too. This whole situation has been driving me crazy. But if Mary's being generous by taking Xavier in and forgiving the past, what am I supposed to say? It's a good chance for Xavier to be officially recognized as my son. So that was what my father thought, too. He was actually grateful to Mary for being generous. There was nothing I could do from so far away, so I swallowed my frustration and softened my tone. Father, if Xavier is living with you now, please keep an eye on him. He's only 12 and really needs a father figure at this age. You're successful, and I'm sure he'll grow up to be just as great under your care. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but after years of knowing my father, I knew how much he loved being praised. His ego was massive, and nothing made him happier than hearing how great he was. I was too far away to do anything, so I could only hope that my father would at least protect Xavier and not let him get bullied by Mary or Cindy. I called Xavier every day. At first, he'd chat with me about how strange everything felt in the new house, like how Mary always had a stern look on her face, Cindy didn't like him, and he was mostly confined to his own room. However, over time, he talked less and less, only saying that he was fine and that the food was good. Then, one day, Xavier told me quietly over the phone, "Willow, I want to come home. I don't want to stay here anymore. I can make my own food. I know how to make sandwiches." Hearing that broke my heart, and I promised him through tears. "Xavier, give me 4 years. Once I graduate, I'll take you back to live with me." He went silent for a moment, then whispered, "Okay, Willow. I'll wait for you." A few days later, while I was working, my mother called. "Willow, something's wrong. Your brother, something's happened to him." My heart pounded, and I froze. All I could hear was her wailing through the phone, "Why am I so unlucky? I didn't even get to enjoy my son's success, and now he's gone. I raised him for 12 years, and he's gone." It took me 10 minutes to understand what she was saying. Xavier had an allergic reaction after eating an almond tart at my father's house. The reaction was so severe that he didn't make it. When Xavier was 2, I once fed him a peanut butter sandwich. Not long after, his whole body broke out in rashes, and his face swelled up. I was so scared that I dragged my mother away from her game to take him to the hospital. The doctor said he had a severe nut allergy. We were lucky we got him there in time, or the swelling in his throat could have choked him to death. From then on, nuts were completely banned from Xavier's diet. Both my mother and father knew about his allergy. I had also warned Xavier many times, and he'd always been careful. As he got older, though, a little exposure didn't hurt him much, so I couldn't imagine how much he'd eaten to trigger such a violent reaction. The phone slipped from my hand as I braced myself against the table to keep from collapsing. Pain shot through my chest, spreading through my body. The little brother who used to comfort me during thunderstorms and had promised to wait for me never got to see the day I would bring him home. 6 years later, when I returned to this city, I had completed both my undergrad and grad studies at Futura University. During those 6 years, I lived away from home, working part-time to pay my tuition. I never came back or contacted anyone from my past because I was afraid to face what I'd left behind. Thinking about Xavier, especially, was like an open wound I wasn't ready to approach. I knew I wouldn't be able to hold it together if I did. My mother still lived in the same old apartment. She was only in her 40s, but years of late-night gambling and living carelessly had made her look bloated and aged. Her once beautiful face was long gone. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, she froze for a full minute. Then, she wiped away a tear with her rough hand. "You ungrateful girl, why are you back? So you remember you have a mother? Your brother had more heart than you ever did. If you were still here." "He's been gone for 6 years. I cut her off coldly. Stepping into that apartment again felt like walking into a place stuck in the past but with all the life drained out of it. My mother wiped her tears and brightened up. "It's good you're back. You've been in school all these years, and now you've made something of yourself. I knew it. Finally, something's going right for me. I'm counting on you to take care of me when I'm old." I looked at the couch, piled high with dirty laundry, and sat at the dining table instead. I stopped my mother, who was heading to the kitchen to make tea. "Don't bother. I'm just here to ask you one thing. When you sent Xavier away back then, did you tell Mary he was allergic to nuts?" "Of course I did." My mother's eyes went wide. "I made it crystal clear that kid couldn't go near nuts, peanuts, cashews, or anything with a shell. Mary promised she'd be careful. Plus, Xavier was 12. He knew his allergies and was always careful." I didn't say anything more. Ignoring her attempts to get me to stay, I left that apartment, taking with me only a photo of Xavier that I'd snapped on his 12th birthday. In the picture, he was smiling wide, his eyes crinkled, showing off a set of pearly white teeth. I had the same picture, but I couldn't leave him behind in that apartment. Later, I arranged to meet my father at a cafe. He hadn't changed much. It seemed men aged better than women. "It was an accident," he said urgently the moment he sat down, like he needed to clear his conscience. "I told the housekeeper, Georgina, that Xavier couldn't have nuts. But that day, Georgina made an almond tart and left it on the table. She forgot to tell Xavier it had almonds in it, so he ate it without thinking. The next morning, when Georgina went to wake him, she found." "And where were you? Didn't you notice anything wrong the night before?" I couldn't stop myself from asking. My father avoided my eyes. "I had a business dinner that night, so I wasn't home for dinner. Mary said Xavier had a slight rash after eating, but he didn't mention feeling unwell. He just went to bed." I stirred the black coffee in front of me, my heart wrenching as if a giant hand was crushing it into a ball. How horrible must it have been to suffocate to death? Did Xavier struggle through the night, all alone? Did he try to call for help? Did he think about reaching out to me, his sister? These were the questions I'd spent 6 years avoiding, terrified to face. Now, they flooded over me like a tidal wave, leaving me helpless. "After it happened, Mary fired Georgina immediately," my father added. "It was a tragic accident. Mary and your half-sister, Cindy, loved Xavier. When he passed, Cindy cried the hardest." I took a sip of the coffee, its bitterness filling my mouth. Pushing down the emotions threatening to overwhelm me, I forced a sympathetic smile. "Father, let's not dwell on the past. It hurts us both." He looked visibly relieved. Yes, there's no point in bringing it up. It's better to move on. So, what are your plans now that you're back? I gave him a small smile. I majored in finance management. I'd like to join your company. My father looked uncomfortable. I sighed softly. Xavier used to tell me all the time that he wished he had more time with you. He really looked up to you, but you were always so busy. Now that he's gone, I just want to stay by your side, to be there for you, just like he would have been. And besides, you're such a success in this city, a real powerhouse. I'd love to learn from you. Seeing my father's expression soften, I seized the moment and said, I want to start from the bottom, as a regular employee. I promise I won't use your name to get any special treatment or embarrass you. I'll even go by the name Willow Grange. No one will know I'm your daughter. He couldn't refuse me any longer, though he didn't exactly give me what I wanted either. Instead of placing me in the main company of Heights Corp., he quietly arranged for me to start at one of his subsidiary investment firms. I was hired as an entry-level employee in the development department. The HR manager at Jones Investment Company had worked with my father for years, so they knew to keep my identity under wraps. No one knew I was Marcus Norton's daughter, and I even downplayed my academic background. My job was pretty simple but dull, handing out surveys on the street and collecting them for feasibility studies. Most of my coworkers took a half-hearted approach. They'd hire a few students and have them stand on street corners pestering passers-by with surveys, and most people would walk away annoyed without filling them out. However, I took a different approach. I studied the survey questions and targeted specific groups, like young people for e-commerce, new moms for early education projects, and office workers for the bike-sharing program. My data analysis was thorough and useful, and clients appreciated it. Soon, the company manager, Tony Lewisham, started noticing me. During one of my reports, I casually mentioned that I had graduated from Futura University. He was shocked. A top university graduate doing street surveys? That's a waste of talent. Shortly after, he promoted me to team leader. In 2 months, I led my team to land 2 significant projects, and suddenly, everyone in the company saw me in a new light. After one contract was signed, I let HR accidentally reveal to Tony that I had a master's degree. Why didn't you mention your education when you first joined? He asked. You could have started at a higher position. I answered confidently, a degree doesn't mean everything. What matters is ability. Many companies think fresh graduates have high expectations but no real skills. I just wanted to prove myself with hard work. That was how, within 6 months, I became Tony's assistant. Working closely with him, I wasn't just handling small projects anymore. I was now involved with deals worth millions, and the companies I dealt with were publicly listed. As the playing field changed, so did the resources I had access to. During one of my client meetings, I overheard that Starline Corporation had an investment project worth over $1 billion that was up for evaluation. Coincidentally, Starline Corporation was hosting a corporate event that evening. As such, I dressed to impress in a season's new burgundy Gucci wrap dress, had my hair styled in voluminous curls, and applied a flawless, slightly vintage makeup look. The event was at the Four Seasons Hotel. I thought my appearance would be enough to slip in unnoticed, but the security at the entrance was checking guests' invitations, and they stopped me. Ma'am, may I see your invite? Just a moment, I said with a smile, pretending to search through my purse while subtly glancing around. Then, I spotted a tall, lean man walking by. He didn't have an invitation in hand, but no one stopped him. He strolled right past me, effortlessly. I quickly stepped forward and looped my arm through his, laughing playfully. You're walking so fast. Why didn't you wait for me? He turned to look at me, clearly surprised. He was around 30, with sharp, deep-set features and an especially striking pair of eyes. The security guards watched us walk in together without questioning anything further. Once we were out of sight from security, I gasped slightly and let go of his arm. I'm so sorry. I thought you were someone else. He smiled a small, knowing grin, and his eyes seemed to pierce right through me, as if he could see straight into my soul. He gave a slight bow. It was my pleasure. I hope you enjoy your evening. Then, he disappeared into the crowd of guests. I scanned the room, quickly locking onto my target. It was Leo Jefferson, the heir to Starline Corporation. He was 25 years old, freshly returned from studying overseas. He was also the fiancé of my stepsister, Cindy, my father's eldest daughter. Apparently, the two families had been close for generations, and their business ties ran deep. Leo and Cindy had grown up together, making them the perfect match. I grabbed a cocktail from a passing waiter and moved into Leo's blind spot, sliding up next to him. He had a scholarly look, polite and refined. Honestly, he seemed more like a fresh college graduate than the heir to a corporate empire. At that moment, he was deep in conversation with someone across from him, nodding and smiling with all the right cues. Feeling someone approach, he glanced my way briefly, then, without thinking, casually wrapped an arm around my waist. I let out a soft gasp, and his whole body tensed. He quickly turned to look at me, his face flushing red as he pulled his arm back. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were." Before he could finish, a woman stormed over, her expression a mix of anger and possession. She wrapped herself around his arm like a territorial claim. It was none other than Cindy, my father's eldest daughter and Leo's fiancée, the stepsister I'd only ever seen in photos. I smiled at Leo, unbothered, and said, "No problem." Then, I cast a brief glance at Cindy before walking away with a casual smile. Cindy pursed her lips, clearly uncomfortable, and tugged at the burgundy Gucci dress she was wearing. Yes, we were wearing the exact same dress. I knew from my father that Cindy was a die-hard Gucci fan, so I made sure to do my homework, looking up her latest purchases. That was how I knew she'd ordered the season's new Gucci dress. Naturally, I went to a high-end store and rented the exact same one. Of course, she bought hers, and I rented mine. The dress alone cost 6 figures, which I definitely couldn't afford. Even the rental fee had eaten up my entire month's salary, plus I had to get matching heels and a clutch. But hey, a girl had to do what she had got to do. The same dress on two different people created two very different impressions, and it was only natural that people would compare. Cindy had a curvier figure, making the dress look bold and glamorous on her. I, on the other hand, kept in shape by running and working out regularly. On me, the dress highlighted my slim waist and more toned physique. Cindy had styled her hair in an elaborate bun, topped off with a diamond hairpin. She was wearing a matching set of jewelry that made her sparkle but also came off a little overdone. Meanwhile, I wasn't wearing any jewelry. My dark hair and red lips contrasted perfectly with my fair skin, giving me a natural, effortless kind of beauty. Cindy leaned in to whisper something to Leo, and after a moment, they left the hall together, heading for the lounge. If I had to guess, she was probably going to change out of her dress. Women like her always brought more than one outfit to events like that. I wandered over to the buffet table, helping myself to some food when Leo casually strolled up next to me and grabbed a few finger sandwiches. "I'm really sorry about earlier," he said. I turned to him, flashing a bright smile. Honestly, the more embarrassing part was wearing the same dress as someone else. After that, I tilted my head and gave him a playful wink. "Do you think women are just too dramatic and complicated?" He laughed, his smile softening his young, handsome face. "And besides, it's not your fault. I came over on purpose to talk to you," I said as I took a bite of food. He blushed, looking flustered, like a kid caught off guard. "Hey, don't get any ideas," I teased, pretending to be shy. "I'm a consultant with a venture capital firm, and I heard your company has an investment project I'd like to discuss with you." "Oh, really?" He let out a sigh of relief. "But actually, we've decided to let Jones Investment Company, under Heights Corp., handle the evaluation." "Well, that's perfect. I'm with Jones Investment Company, a subsidiary under Heights Corporation. How about we chat about it now? We might as well get a head start," I said, raising an eyebrow. A little smirk crept onto my face, and I could see it amused him. He smiled back, his expression warming. "All right, tomorrow morning at my office. I'll be ready whenever you are." Just then, Cindy reappeared, now wearing a pink dress. I wasn't ready to go head-to-head with her just yet. Since I'd achieved what I came for, I decided to make my exit. I turned to Leo and said, "See you tomorrow." Before I left, I handed him a glass of red wine from the table. A Bordeaux from Chateau Mouton Rothschild. This vineyard's wines have quite the reputation, but they can be hit or miss. Sometimes they're exceptional, and other times, a bit average. Personally, I'm not a fan of the coffee notes and the flavor, but pair it with pineapple, and you might find a pleasant surprise. Leo accepted the glass, looking thoughtful for a moment before asking, "Wait, I didn't catch your name." I waved him off with a smile. "I'll tell you tomorrow." As I walked out of the hall, I felt someone's intense gaze following me. I turned to see the man who had brought me to the event. He raised his glass to me, smiling as though he had just enjoyed watching an intriguing show. I smiled back, raised my glass in return, then casually placed it on a waiter's tray and walked out of the hall. After my first victory, things got a lot easier. As I said, some talents were just innate. Reading people and understanding what they wanted was something I had been good at since I was a kid. Now, as an adult, I had honed that skill to perfection, especially when it came to getting a man's attention. Making a man interested was pretty simple. One just had to remember 3 things. First, know what he liked. Second, surprise him. Third, trigger his protective instincts. The next day, when I went to Starline Corporation, I wore a simple but perfectly fitted business suit and light makeup, fresh and professional. I was a completely different person from the carefree, bold version of myself he saw the day before. Leo's assistant led me to his office, where he was already waiting for me. Starline Corporation was planning a new energy project in the area. I'd done my homework thoroughly, so I could speak confidently about everything, for example, market trends, product comparisons, feasibility studies, project initiation, funding cycles, market development strategies, you name it. Leo kept nodding along, clearly impressed. We ended up talking for 3 straight hours. Wow, time really flew. "It's noon," he said, standing up from the couch. "How about we grab a quick lunch together?" "I can't, unfortunately," I responded with a polite smile. "I have to head back to my office to brief my team on the project. I want to get the feasibility report to you as soon as possible." "You know, giving this project to Jones Investments was the smartest decision Starline made," he said sincerely. I smirked inwardly, thinking, of course, you wouldn't give it to anyone else, considering your future father-in-law owns the company. However, outwardly, I smiled sweetly. "I'll be sure to pass that along to my manager. I'll take it as a compliment on my work ethic and capabilities." He chuckled and poured me a glass of wine. "It's a genuine compliment. Here's to our successful partnership." I swirled the wine glass, taking a small sip before my face lit up with pleasant surprise. "Hope Brian." He looked a bit taken aback. "This one's not very common. Most people don't know it." I took another sip, savoring it before continuing. "In terms of quality and flavor, Hope Brian is exceptional. The tannins are refined, the finish is long, and it has this refreshing fruit aroma. As they said, know thyself, know thy enemy. That was how one wins every battle." I'd been collecting information on Leo for the past 6 months. By now, I knew everything about him, from the kindergarten he attended as a kid to the Ivy League university he graduated from and his personality traits to his hobbies. I knew he liked wine, so I studied European wineries and read countless reviews from top sommeliers. A girl who could only afford cheap wine from the supermarket had managed to turn herself into a wine connoisseur, at least in front of Leo. He also liked sailing, golf, and jazz. God knew how many sleepless nights I spent researching those hobbies just to impress him. I was just a regular girl who hadn't even been abroad and had to stretch her paycheck to make it through the month. However, to win him over, I'd done my homework. Soon, Leo would realize we shared the same interests. I'd like what he liked, and I could hold a conversation on any of his favorite topics. He'd start a sentence, and I'd finish it. Catering to a man's tastes was just the first step. Figuring out a man's hobbies wasn't hard, as most guys love to talk about themselves, showing off like a peacock spreading its feathers. All one had to do was listen, throw in a few compliments, and watch him puff up with pride. The real challenge, however, was turning oneself into the kind of woman he would actually fall for. People said men were fickle, that they loved all kinds of women. Sure, they might enjoy variety when they were just having fun, but the type of woman who really captured their heart was almost always the same type. It was easy to see in real life. A man could go through several girlfriends, but they all tend to be the same type. He might complain that his ex was clingy and indecisive, but the next girl he brings home would still be clingy and indecisive. It was because people were drawn to a specific type, and that kind of deep-seated attraction couldn't be changed easily. After a few encounters, I knew that the woman who could win Leo over wasn't someone like Cindy, with her spoiled princess attitude, nor was it some innocent girl-next-door type. He was into smart, independent women who had just the right amount of softness. That was a role I could play effortlessly. I had worried he might prefer someone naive and sweet, which would have been hard for me to fake, but this was easy. Even before the project officially kicked off, I could tell from the way he looked at me, his eyes heated and intense, that he was already far too invested. Maybe he didn't even realize it yet, but as the future heir of Starline Corporation, he was spending way more time and energy on this project than necessary, just for an excuse to